Western Civ teacher, and really hard ass, really good teacher, really scary teacher. And he taught us how to write term papers. And he taught this system that was very simple, that involved index cards and a box to put the index cards in. And as you're doing your research on the topic, you put divisions in the box on different subjects. And then every time you find a fact or piece of information on a page, you would write one fact per index card, one piece of information per index card. And then there was also a system that you would use for footnoting. So like if the first book I would read would be book A. So at the bottom of the index card, I would write A and then the page that I found it on. So A23, right? So, and then when I went to the next book, it would be B, page 46, right? So that way you can mix up the cards and you can still remember where everything came from. Very simple. And then each card gets one fact only, and each fact goes in the filing system under whatever subject, whatever area is. And when you start to write, you've got all your facts at your fingertips in order. I've taken that system, which was used for researching, and I've grown it into a system that I use for writing my novels, because my novels are very research-based. And so, for instance, this recent novel that I just wrote called City of Girls, that takes place in New York City in the 1940s in the theater world, and involves a young woman who moves to New York City in 1940 and gets pulled into a group of showgirls and dancers and playboys and actors and goes on a wild promiscuity bender just as the war is about to begin for America. That book required an enormous amount of research to be able to speak the language of the 1940s, to be able to write a play. There's a musical that's in the middle of the book, and I had to figure out, like, get the language of playwriting of the 1940s correct. How did people dress? What were they wearing? What was going on in the news at the time? And so I would get a big shoebox and a bunch of index cards and just dive into the research, which took me about 3 or 4 years. And I would read a lot of biographies and a lot of letters, and every single idea and every single fact got its own card. So every time I had a line of dialogue that I wanted to put into the book, I would write it on its own card and I would put it for that character into their little section. Every time I found out something about, I had a little section called fashion 1940s, right? So every time I found any tiny little detail, I would put it into that section that was about fashion. Anytime I had a detail about, like, sex, for instance, I needed to kind of figure out what the sexual culture was of New York City in the 1940s. What kind of birth control were people using? How were they talking about sex? So anything I found on there, I put into the sex section. Anything I found out about what it was like working at the Brooklyn Naval Yards in the 1940s during the war, because my character ends up working there, would go into the Navy Yard section. So it's all very tidy and organized in box after box after box. And by the time it's done, it's like I've got a novel. I call it a book in a box, but it's really usually 5 boxes by then. But it's such a great gift, because when you're writing, and it really helps you. It really helps me with writer's block, because as I'm introducing a new character into the story, all I have to do is reach into the box and pull out her file. And because I've been putting notes in there for the last 4 years, I've got like a 2-inch thick file on this character of details of things she would say, or what she's wearing, or ideas for character development. And so it's an assistance to myself when I sit down to write, that I can draw upon that and use it. And it makes it so much easier. And sometimes the research is tedious, but part of my sense of stewardship and friendship over myself is that I try to do really nice things for Liz. And I try to do really nice things for future Liz. You know, like, I hate flossing my teeth, but I do it for future Liz as a gift. So every night I floss my teeth, I'm like, I hate this, but future Liz, this is for you, babe, because I care about you and I love you. And like, and so when I'm writing these notes to myself, so I might be sitting there at the New York Public Library doing research on, like, how much theater productions cost in the 1940s, and you know, how much the sets would have cost and who would have been on hand, like boring stuff, you know. But I'll just sit there and I'll find some really great detail and I'll write it on a card and I'll be like, oh my God, future Liz is going to be so psyched when she finds this card 3 years from now, because she's going to be writing the scene and she's going to be stuck and she's going to reach in and she's going to pull out this detail and she's going to be like, oh yes, like, so. And then what happens is that while I'm writing, I'll reach in and I'll find some amazing card with a great piece of dialogue on it, or a great detail that really helps with the scene, and I'll be like, thanks, past Liz. You're the best, you know. And it's like this little salute across time, where like past Liz is like, I got you, babe, and future Liz is like, thank you for looking out for me, you're the best. So like, all of the preparation that I do is to help myself during the hard part, which is the actual creating a novel. And I want to give myself all the help I can, because I want to suffer the least that I possibly can. So I really do try to, like, really show up for future Liz.
It strikes me that you have a very